and one. Hey guys, it's Abraham DeWeese with Seattle Sports Union once again with the SoCal Seahawk. Robert English, how you doing today, Robert?
I am doing okay. It's Hump Day. We're a few days removed from that debacle on Sunday, so I've finally started to come to terms with it, and I'm turning my week around right about now.
Yeah, last couple of years we've been doing some of these podcasts after the games, and I I'm kind of interested how tonight's podcast is going to go, considering we don't have the anger and the vitriol and the profanity that usually occurs during these podcasts.
Right.
It was not good. It wasn't good. The Seahawks, for all of you out there who saw, listened, and suffered with me and Rob, it was a case of a team on a national stage that, in my opinion, Rob, almost looked like a national disgrace.
Yeah, it really was. It was a disgrace on many different levels. When you look at the situation going in, it was a really, just prime opportunity for the Seahawks to, really get a real stronghold on the rest of the league. Granted, the rest of our division is doing it as well, but really, the NFC West, it was looking very strong going into week 3. Um, to go into start off the year 3-0, you just can't ask for much better than that. And you're going against a team that is without their starting quarterback. You're playing at home. All signs pointed to 3-0, and we just gave up the ghost.
Yeah, and it just is baffling, Rob, in the respect, as you mentioned, that Drew Brees was out. They were starting Teddy Bridgewater, a backup who, on this show last week, you and I kind of speculated he wasn't going to do much. He wasn't going to offer much. And from what I saw, he didn't. He just played well enough not to lose. And the Seahawks basically threw up all over themselves and decided to make every error at every possibility, at every opportunity. And for a Seattle team that's been 15-0 in the month of September under Pete Carroll, I at home, that is, I just don't understand how were they so undermotivated and underprepared.
It's maybe there's that old, saying about not looking past the team,
Yeah.
not looking ahead. And I struggled to understand how you might look ahead of the Saints, a team that was in, the NFC Championship last year.
Yeah.
So how would you really look past them even without Drew Brees? But it just I don't know if they were. I don't see. It's very like you said, it's baffling because how could this team ride very high on themselves? Even given the 2 wins that they had, they weren't beautiful, they weren't pretty. You might say they were gritty, but but at the very best, they left a lot to be desired, and left a lot of, probably I'd say more questions than there were answers. So it just seems very baffling that you would fall asleep on this game. Um,
Yeah.
but it seems that's exactly what they did.
So there are plenty of fingers to point. I want to flip the I want to flip the conversation to the to who did their job right. Was there anybody that you noticed that you're not worried about? You looked at them and you said, "That's not the problem. That person or that group did their job well."
Well, I think the obvious player with that question in mind has to be one number 3, who had
Russell Wilson.
absolutely had an MVP day. That 400 plus yards. I think he was in the 80%. Well, I don't know about. He was in the 80%. I think he had at one point throughout the maybe I want to say in the third quarter, he had only missed 1 or 2, maybe 3 passes, but he was super high in his passing percentage, 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 passing touchdowns. It was a banner day for Russell Wilson. But if you remove number 3 from the equation, it's hard to find one. But I will say that the offensive line did protect well. They didn't make a lot of holes in the running game, but at least they kept Russell clean.
Yeah, which is kind of weird because we all thought that the run blocking was far ahead of the pass blocking on this team.
Right. We've all that's always kind of been the old adage, right? Like Russell runs for his life, but he gives the ball to Marshawn Lynch or Thomas Rawls and now Chris Carson and yards are gained. But yeah, on Sunday it was Twilight Zone.
Neat little stat for us all as Seahawks fans. Russell Wilson is the first player since 1950 with 400 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns, 50 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns in one game. Just to throw this out there. We lost, yes, but this was a performance that is going to get buried and no one's going to remember, at least on the national stage, as one of the most prolific quarterbacked games of all time.
Truly. And I mean, and that's the shame, isn't it? I mean, what an outrageous performance. And granted, if it wasn't for all of the inadequacies in the game leading up to, later in the game when Russell was really throwing the ball a lot. I mean, so, look at it like this. If we had won the game, he probably wouldn't have had such a great day, right? So it's unfortunate that it had to come in a losing effort. But all the same, the stats are there. The numbers speak for themselves. And, I still cringe when I go on the interwebs and I see people talking about how Russell Wilson is not elite. When you look at the numbers, the guy shares, top 3 and top 5 lists, with the names of the ones we already assume are the greats, the Bradys and the Rodgers and the Breezes. So I mean, at some point or another, people are going to have to just accept the fact that the kid's elite.
Can we also take a look at the other side of the ball? Let's take a look at a middle linebacker by the name of Bobby Wagner. When can we get to the point, Rob, where on the national stage we stop just giving the crown of best defensive player in the league to Luke Kuechly and maybe actually think about Bobby Wagner in his 18 tackles on Sunday?
Well, I think that we're starting to turn a corner on the national stage here. Bobby Wagner is, I think, starting to finally get that recognition. I think for a long time he has, suffered that unfortunate reality, which the Seahawks in general have always suffered, where they're stuck up there in the Pacific Northwest and kind of the people just kind of forget about you. So he has quietly become the greatest or the best linebacker in football. I want to say he's superseded Luke Kuechly, even on the national scale. If you listen to the so-called experts on TV, they're starting to give him his due praise. But That's it's been good. A long time coming.
That's good that you're hearing it. Maybe I just have the blinders of, the blue and the bright lash green that just I feel like the East Coast just hates us for some reason. But
it definitely seems like there's definitely an aversion to giving us our due credit.
Yeah. So let's take a look at the Saints and what they did right. They scored when they needed to, but I'm going to tell you what, let's take away those 2 flukes, and I call them flukes, the punt return for a touchdown and the fumble return for a touchdown. And let's look at what they did to us while they were on offense. I want to be honest, Rob, that wasn't a very complicated offense at all. I knew what was going to happen. They're going to run Kamara between the tackles. They're going to do screen passes to Kamara and slants to Michael Thomas. And doggone it, Rob, if I can call these plays, why can't Ken Norton stop these plays, the defensive coordinator for the Hawks?
Is it possible that they over prepared or prepared for something that just really didn't show up? I mean, I was thinking that we were going to see a lot more gadgetry, with Taysom Hill back there. I mean, Taysom Hill only got a couple of snaps throughout the whole entire game.
That's a good point. I don't remember any razzle dazzle. There was one long pass play, but all their pass plays were, like I said, the slants or the screens. Mm-hmm. So you're saying maybe the Seahawks were expecting something that just never came.
I just want to say maybe they just will have their, when you kind of prick up your ears, always looking for something that you're not expecting. And then you kind of forget about the things that you just should normally be expecting. I know for sure that they were having some trouble with a guy named Alvin Kamara. On my post game podcast, I titled it "Lights, Camera, Action" because that's what we got. That's what we got on Sunday. Alvin Kamara was, he seemed unstoppable. We talk about Bobby Wagner. As great as Bobby Wagner is and was on Sunday, even he missed a few tackles. He had 18 tackles, so it's tough to talk about him missing tackles. But I saw him miss at least 2 or 3 tackles trying to tackle Alvin Kamara. Michael Kendrick's the same. I'm like, How come we can't tackle this guy? And apparently, I obviously underestimated Alvin Kamara because I think, okay, look, we're gonna tackle this guy, we're gonna hit him, we're gonna use this hawk tackling, which I also talked about. I think that message has been lost, but the old hawk tackling thing that Seattle was talking about some years back. We couldn't tackle the dude. On that screen pass that he scored on, there was so many missed tackles on there that we were just bouncing off of him. It was blowing my mind.
Baffling. Leno Hill couldn't tackle. Like you said, Wright and Kendricks couldn't tackle. Al Woods is lining up in the wrong doggone position and getting fouls.
Oh my gosh.
Jefferson disappears. Iggy Ansah, who I expected, maybe my expectations were off, but I just expected to see his name all the time. He was quiet. Granted, I think he only got like 20 snaps, but except for Wagner in his 18 tackles, nobody showed up. Nobody.
Yeah, no, and I don't know if maybe there was some field conditions. Chris Carson was slipping all over the place early in the game, and I couldn't quite figure out what the deal was with that. But the defensive line there was no pressure on the quarterbacks from either side. Really. And I'm thinking, okay, so how did both sides just figure out how to block up the opposing defensive line so well? I don't know if maybe there was something with the field. I know it was raining, and it would be the first time we played in the rain at the Clink. But it's like nobody was able to get off, get a good jump. And I don't know, was it something to do with the field? Who knows? But no one showed up on the defensive line.
Yeah, I don't know. And maybe you're right. Maybe a rainy, slick conditions hurt a defensive line, but I don't know. Both teams have to play on it, and it's let's go to that Chris Carson mention that you just had. That's our field. Why doesn't our equipment manager or running backs coach or whomever, or Chris Carson, how do they not know the correct cleats to play in those conditions on that field? It wasn't like 5 feet of snow. It wasn't 100 degrees. It was normal Seattle conditions. How does that happen?
Yeah, normally when you have a situation where a receiver or a running back is slipping, you have one, maybe 2 slips. They get off the field, they get over to the equipment manager, they switch up the spikes, and they're back and they're fine. Carson, I don't know where I really couldn't wrap my head around that one. How many times he slipped. There was one run where there was a large hole available for him to run through, and he slipped, and wasn't able to get to it. And it really upset me, actually, was later on in the game, the same thing happened to Alvin Kamara, where there was a big hole for him to get through. He slipped, but then popped himself right back up, ended up getting 6-7 yards on the run. And I was like, okay, well, what's up with Carson? But
so you played back in high school and whatnot. Did you notice there was a lot of tape on his ankles? Does that affect cutting? Does that affect play in wet conditions?
I did notice that. It's funny you say that, because I did notice that, and I was thinking, why would the tape affect it? Unless, of course, the tape was, actually over the cleat itself, over the actual cleats, and not maybe like in the middle of the arch of the foot. I did notice that. that there was a lot of tape on his ankle and around his foot. But I just kind of gave it the benefit of the doubt that they wouldn't have wrapped his foot in a fashion that was going to make him unable to, keep his footing out there on that field. But I did notice it.
Maybe I'm just shooting at, just picking straws out of a cup here. But I think about Chris Carson's game. That's his third fumbled lost when Eli Apple, the cornerback for the Saints, took that, knocked that ball out of his hand, and then Bell, what's his name, the Saints safety, Von Bell, when he scooped it up and ran it for a touchdown, I just thought to myself, what is going on with Carson? You're slipping all over the place. They threw up a stat on the TV. He only had 3 fumbles, like in his previous 2 years. Mm-hmm. And here it is this year. This is the third fumble lost in the last 2 games. What's going on up there? And is it time to replace him?
Well, first of all, I'm not as forgiving as the rest of the world is on this. I say Chris Carson has 4 fumbles in the first 3 games. There's that one that they credit one to Russell Wilson because it was on the handoff, but I'm not buying that. I say that was Chris Carson's fault too, but maybe I'm just being a little too harsh on the guy. Is it time to move on? I would have to say no, and I only say that because we have we've had a player on our team who had the fumble Rooskies once before by the name of Amon Green,
right?
And he was able to fix his fumbling issues. And when he left the Seahawks, he ended up going to the Green Bay Packers, and that following year he led the league in rushing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I want to say we could probably fix this, and maybe it's just it's a stroke of a 3-week long stroke of bad luck. Even on that play that you mentioned when Eli Apple punched the ball out, you did see that he went to go wrap the ball up tight with both hands, and so it's like, okay, he had it in his mind, but then it was like, well, he wanted to brace himself for the fall, so he then pulled back from that. He relinquished that hold on the ball a little bit, and that was precisely the moment that Eli Apple punched the ball out. So there's a little bit of, you might say, a little bit of bad luck in it. But the reality of it is it's 3 weeks in a row, 3/4 fumbles. And now you can count on the rest of the league is going. I mean, there's blood in the water when it comes to Chris Carson. They know that he's got the Fumbarooskies. I can only imagine that they are going to be attacking that football whenever he has it in his hands now.
Now therein lies a problem, because once you start correcting, it's not really mid-season. We're still in the first quarter, but we're in the season. Once you start trying to correct and have him correct those the problems in his game, you end up in a scenario, don't you, where maybe he practices that so much he no longer gets those breakaways through the hole because he's so focused on covering up.
Right. And I thought about that as well. And if you're so concerned about holding on to the football, you can't help but lose focus in other places. I mean, Carson is great because he gets that ball, he attacks the line of scrimmage, he gets through holes quickly. Once he's through that first level, he is shifty enough to avoid tackles or bounce off of someone and break big runs like the one that where he fumbled. I think if he's so focused on hold on to the football, that what was it? Was it a 23-yard run before he got
it was
taken down?
33.
33. Yeah. So I mean, that 33-yard run probably only ends up.
I'm sorry. The return was 33 yards. Sorry, I think you're right. I think it was 23, but
yeah, something like that. But that run probably ends up only going maybe 8 or 9 yards. When you're worried about hold on to the football.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'll take 9 yards and the football is still in our possession than a 20-yard run and a fumble. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it wasn't just 8 or 9 guys on the defense doing poorly, and it wasn't just Chris Carson doing poorly, and it wasn't just one bad punt return. Keep in mind, we only lost this game by 6 points. The coaching, in my opinion, was quite suspect. I did not like I did not like some of the decisions on the defense. I definitely did not like the 4th-and-1 decisions. And that just maybe me, growing up a little bit back in the day where you get a little conservative and you kick the damn field goal on 4th-and-1. But every fourth down that we went for, I just was like, go take the points, will you? What happened on these 4th-and-1s?
Well,
was it the right decision or wrong decision? Am I just an old fogey that can't strike when the iron's hot? Because it failed. They all failed.
They all failed. And I think there was only one of the 4th-and-1s that we were actually in scoring range, right? I think the other ones we would have ended up just punting, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, so it takes me back to the whole Marshawn Lynch and the Super Bowl thing, right? Like, and I wonder if maybe Pete Carroll thinks about this sometimes too. People always say if it's 4th-and-1 and you throw the ball and you don't get it, people are gonna say, why didn't you just run the ball, right? And in the Super Bowl and point. But people do. There's a misconception. People don't realize that when you only need 1 yard, it's very hard to get 1 yard. And when you need 7 yards, 1 yard comes easy. But when you only need 1, it's hard to get 1. So these defenses are stacking up, and maybe our O-line as far as run blocking is not built for those those down and dirty, gritty, short yardage runs. I mean, I even think, in my personal opinion, last week against Pittsburgh, the one that he broke late, which basically sealed the game up for us. I remember, was it a 4th-and-1 or was it a 3rd-and-1? I think it was a 4th-and-1 that we actually went for it. And he had went to the right side and got stopped up, and then he cut back to the left and ended up getting 20-something yards, and that basically sealed it up for us. That one, I think that was a run that was in this Saints game as well, but he just got wrapped up when he got stopped up on that right side. Whereas in that Pittsburgh game, he just happened to find some space to the left, cut it back, and took off. But where the play was originally supposed to go, there was nothing there. Where the play was blocked up for, there was nothing there. And the same thing happened on Sunday against the Saints. We just didn't get the push.
Okay. So you're going to put that more on the players, and I respect that. Tell me this, though. What happened with the timeouts at the end of the half? Seahawks were driving, and for some reason, they went to halftime with 2 timeouts left, not bothering to use them, and at least set themselves up for a field goal.
Now, you know that I am an apologist for the Seattle Seahawks coaching staff.
Right.
And I was all about the offensive coordinator before, and I'm all about the offensive coordinator now, and I'm all about the head coach now. I stand by my coaching staff, right? When I listened to Pete Carroll tell us about leading into that half, I was just kind of gritting my teeth like, Pete, what are you talking about, man?
Are you talking about this quote here? Because I pulled this quote for my article that I wrote on SeattleSportsUnion.com. Pete Carroll said of that halftime break, and I quote, "We had already been kind of stung by the sequence before, and it's a long way home, but Russ came up with some magic and made a great play with DK." That's Metcalf. If we knew that was going to happen, I would have called a timeout earlier. Is that the quote you're thinking of?
That's exactly the quote I'm thinking of. And I'm thinking like, okay, well, Pete, yeah, if any of us were clairvoyant, life would be a lot more easy. Life would be a lot easier if we could see the future. But that still doesn't explain why you go into the half with 2 timeouts. The fact that we hit DK on that deep ball late just means that I think he had thrown in the towel for the half. I think he threw in the towel for the half and wasn't intending on going out there and trying to get anything before the half. I think he was trying to save face. Let's get into the half and let's just figure out what in the hell's going on, and then a play came up, and it's like, oh well, I guess I should have trusted in my quarterback, trusted in my team.
You think?
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me when he said it, and I had a lot of trouble with it because, like I said, I am all about the coaching staff. So yeah, it was rough for me to accept that one too.
Boy, I get back to that game, and I give uh, anywhere from a C minus to an F to every player and coach except for Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner. We got a couple of minutes left here, Rob, and I just want to ask you about the game coming up. We obviously don't feel good about what just happened, but if there's one thing I can say, the Saints team is the team that went to the NFC Championship game last year. So it's not like, it's without DeWeese, they still have a lot of talent. The Seahawks are facing a team that doesn't have a lot of talent. How do you think about the Cardinals this next week? What do you think about the Cardinals this upcoming week?
I think that the Cardinals are a team with the way that the Seahawks have been playing so far this year. Here we are coming up on the the first quarter point of the year, and we've been inconsistent at best. We are going up against the Cardinals team that has a dynamic young kid at quarterback, who can get out there and run, and he can toss the ball down the field. If we play soundly on defense, I think we can force him into some mistakes. But we also have to make sure that we have somebody spying him, because he can run like the wind, and we cannot we can't let him do like Colin Kaepernick did to us a little bit back in the day, because he'll do it.
Well, heck, we can't let him do what Mason Rudolph and Andy Dalton do to us this year, right?
True, very true. I want to say that I think that he's probably going to make more passing mistakes, though. If we do what we have to do on defense, if we play our defense soundly, and we can get a little bit of pressure on him, while keeping him in the backfield, I think we can maybe force a few turnovers, which we have not been able to do at all. Really, not even last year. We're so down on the whole turnovers situation, and we haven't forced many this year. So we really need to force him into some mistakes and get some turnovers. He's gonna start throwing the ball late. If they're down late, he's gonna start throwing that football downfield, and they've shown that he can bring a team back to win.
He tied the Lions, right?
Yes, exactly. So was the Lions? Yeah, it was Lions, right?
It was Lions, and they hung tough with the Ravens for at least 3 quarters.
Right. So they're no slouch. They may not have all the tools they need now to really be a contender right now, but they can definitely upset somebody's plans. And I would like that I'd like for that to not be us on Sunday.
If I can recap what you're saying, then is don't treat these guys like they're a slouch. Don't treat them like a directional college team, at Division II level. This is still an NFL team. They still have Chandler Jones, Terrell Suggs, David Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald. Is that it? Am I getting that out of you? That
absolutely. I would say let's not treat them like last year's Cardinals, because they're not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean they had their problems against Carolina. They got Kyler Murray got sacked 8 times. Like you said, he's a rookie. Work on distracting and harassing him. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I actually kind of worry about Chandler Jones and Terrell Suggs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because it's shown so far that the game that we want to play offensively has been disrupted by opposing teams front seven. So we like I said, we've been able to make it out of 2 games. We squeezed our way out of 2 games, and you can kind of say narrowly lost the 3rd game, even though we kind of got it handed to us. We made a run at the end to make it look closer than it actually was.
We had one good quarter, yeah.
right. And there's an argument for that being kind of garbage time. But I mean, who knows? One more mistake on the Saints side, we might have had a chance for a go-ahead score. But we definitely have to make sure that we play soundly on both sides of the ball in this game, or we could end up upset by the kid. And I mean, they got one young quarterback and a bunch of old guys on defense and on offense. They got a brand new quarterback, a middle-aged running back, and an old but apparently ageless wide receiver, and a bunch of old guys on defense. I mean, we should be able to win this game.
All right, so we got to get running here. the question, I got one last question for you that just came up today, and that's tight end Nick Bennett out of the Ohio State University has been traded for a 5th round pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers. What are your thoughts? What are your opinions on that?
Well, I actually didn't mind it. Nick Bennett has been a good, workable, tight end alternate, for us. He's, certainly he hasn't been, super dynamic or anything, but he was fairly sure-handed. I like Nick Bennett on our team. As far as the move, personnel-wise, I like it. We got a 5th round pick from Pittsburgh that the way it's looking might be a pretty decent pick the way Pittsburgh's playing. And
Yeah.
it looks like with all that we're going to be signing Luke Wilson back.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I saw that.
So really we actually didn't lose anything, and frankly we might have gained something. You know what I mean? So we might have got somebody who was a little bit better at the position, and we got a draft pick. So we kind of did we won with this move.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this move as well. The Nick Vannett is going to be a free agent at the end of the year. So the best we could have got was a compensatory pick. That's if we didn't draft anybody or get another free agent. And that compensatory pick, John Clayton from 710 Cairo, ESPN, was stating that it probably would have been a 7th round pick. So, yeah, that I'm really happy with Snyder on picking on that trade. That's a good one.
Absolutely. I'm always happy with Snyder. I'm always happy with Pete. And for the time being, I'm happy with Mr. Schottenheimer. I'm happy with these guys. I'm going to have to stay tuned for one of my next podcasts. I don't know if it'll be this week or next week, but I'm going to be going in on what I see on the interwebs about people attacking these guys. For 2 weeks, people were praising, so many things that we were able to do, against all odds. And then we lose one, and then, the bluebirds come out.
Yeah, so. Then it's, the sky's falling.
Right.
Hey, so we got to sign off here, Rob. SoCal Hawk. Can you tell our audience out there how they can listen to your podcast?
Absolutely. You can catch me at Short Yardage, the podcast called Short Yardage. That's shortyardage.podbean.com. You can also check me out at Seattle Sports Union, along with Abraham and the rest of the guys. Every week, stay tuned for that.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this week. Next week, Robert English, the SoCal Seahawk, and myself, Abraham DeWeese, will be back again here on YouTube, and we'll see you next week. Go Seahawks.
Go Hawks.